It's going, yeah, okay. Here we are, I'm just testing focus. Okay, good. So, well, that was a bit like fun, wasn't it? And I'm slightly overwhelmed by your generosity as well. I didn't mean it when I said there's cards and you can buy them and stuff. You've been buying books and things. Look, you know, none of us can afford to live anymore. What are you doing? But thank you very much. It's very kind of you. And in fact, those little books are out of print now. If you go to Amazon, you can't get them. They were printed. They had 3 runs, and they're all over the world as well. But they're out of print, so they're really hard to get hold of. So if you've got one, you've got one. But they are actually they're my life story as well. If you look in there, if you find the children in there, and there's a man sitting there with a cat, and that's my family. You know, it's like, this is where I go, and these are the people. The person on the front is my wife with my daughter walking down the beach. So it's a little bit of an autobiography in a funny sort of way. Talking of people, I think it's time to have a go at some people. People are tricky. So let's see what we can do. So at this point, I'm not quite with the big moppy brush. I'm scaling down a bit. Let's have a look at what we've got here. Sorry? Where? Show me.
Big seagull.
You made it in a vertical, but that's
Okay, yeah, all right, well, that's fine. So you spent your childhood on your back finding men in the moon and things in the clouds, did you? Know what you've been doing in childhood? Yeah. Okay, so I've got some sort of various sort of sizes of brush here, but let's go for something a little bit that size. So at this point, I'm going to go for something a bit darker. I'm going to go for that sort of neutral tint with a little bit of purple. And I might sort of wet this up a bit, but essentially we're starting to put figure in. So, of course, the great thing about having a break is it allowed certain bits to dry, so that's really good. We need that. I don't like the idea, I told you I don't like black, and I don't like that idea of just one colour. You know, there are nuances of colour, so if I just drop a bit of red into that sleeve, it just bleeds very nicely like that. I say things like it's a beautiful thing. I don't see sort of figures in isolation. I see them as, when they're moving, I see them as passages of colour on the move. That's just how I see them. Again, we talk to the students about, you know, how you see things. How do we see things? How are we meant to see things? I suspect people see things very differently. And it's interesting, I told you that I had special needs, and I've got someone with a condition called Williams condition. And they have sort of spangly eyes and see things differently. And what I like is the disposition, get this, the disposition that requires the needs is to want to work hard, please people, and be happy. So obviously she's going to get the top marks, and she is. You know, things come at a price, but actually people are as they are, and she keeps trying to apologise and say, I'm really sorry about how I am. I said, never, ever, ever, ever apologise about who you are and how you are. I said, you know, you're here and you're doing wonderful creative work. I don't ever want to hear that again. But maybe that's part of the disposition to keep saying sorry as well. Who's saying sorry seems to be the hardest word? It was Elton John, wasn't it?
yeah.
Sorry, I'm rambling now. So here they are walking, blink and you'll miss it, or are they running? A little bit of a... And down here as well, down the legs. And again, don't overdo it. We were talking in the interval about an artist called John Stillman doing the Seago thing. Edward Seago was a man who was a bit brisk and impressionistic as well, and he also did some really quite, you know, he taught Winston Churchill, actually, among other people, but Seago liked the brisk brush, and again, he wouldn't play, and I think you just got to sort of drop it and let it go, and just, here we go, drop some wash in there, lovely movement. Down the arm, down the side there, let that go, just like that. So we've got 2 figures already on the move. Picking up a little bit of blue, got a sort of hood on here, hood into scarf. just like that. Hmm? Chelsea supporter, yeah. Brighton are playing Rome tonight. I don't hold out much hope, but they are at home, so you never know. Of course, my future son-in-law, they're getting married to my daughter in summer. Crystal Palace fan, pretty local to you, so he won't hear of anything about Brighton being spoken. I don't know what this rivalry is, but it's historical. Any of you Palace supporters, but you know it's. What's that?
It's to do with Alan Mullery.
Is it to do with? Is that what it is? Yeah.
He used to manage Palace, and then he went to Brighton, and he said a few offhand things at one of the matches.
And that was it. It said something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. The Carshalton and Wallington Football Historian Society meets here tonight. Everyone is welcome. Okay, I've got a figure running down the back here as well. I'm just going to sort of let that figure bleed into the whatever, into the whatever. Stupid, isn't it? But I like this sort of thing because you can, people say, that person was a dab hand at it, and this is being dab handed. Just running, catching something of the movement, and I'm going to let that go into what probably is going to be the sea, and leave that just for a moment. Just drop something over the top, which could be some hair, and we'll leave it like that because I'm going to see what happens later on. So we've kind of got three figures now. All there are is blobs of paint, of course, but that's the beauty of it.
Have you always painted like this?
No. I said I started to paint like this when I got children. I actually resisted children for around about 10, 12 years, and my wife kept saying, my body clock is ticking away, we need children. I was like, no, I don't think we do. And me being me, I had to think about it. I spent almost 10 years wondering whether children would completely ruin my career, which is an incredibly selfish thing to do. And even now my daughter says, you don't really love us, do you? Oh, no, of course I do. I've had to get used to the embarrassments of their dad. I once fed, accidentally in the garden, I fed foxgloves to my daughter. I didn't realise I was doing it. She was eating them. And I rang the poisons unit at Guy's, and they said, well, you better get yourself to your local hospital, which was the Brighton Children's. Except it was beautiful summer, and she seemed all right, so I kind of gave it a couple of hours in the garden, When I got up to the Children's Hospital, they said, Mr. Tappenden, where do you think you've been? We're waiting for you. This is urgent. So she looks all right, and they wired her up and everything. Felt a fraud, though, because she was bouncing up and down in the cot for 7 hours while I was being under observation. But the problem is, when your kids grow up, they don't let you forget these things. Oh, do you remember that time, Dad, when you locked me in the porch of the house and went shopping and you didn't realise that you'd left me there until you were 1.5 miles down the road? Oh, yeah, I remember that one. And so you go on. But to come back, that was a long digression. I digress. The reason I paint like this is because I had children. It's absolutely true. But actually, I used to spend hours doing these sort of painstaking, super realistic watercolours. And they were great. They were quite big, but you couldn't do many of them. So it used to take months to do them. And when I had a show in my house, and I actually kind of sold out on the quick stuff. I thought, well, actually, this is quite good because you can make money quite quickly. Not that I'm into ruthlessly making money, but it suddenly made sort of some commercial sense. So I now thank my children that they've helped me to make commercial sense. And obviously help to pay for them to be brought up in the manner in which they're accustomed, whatever that is. Anyway, so there we go. I'm gonna leave some of this white for the very reasons that we've been talking about. Some of you have been looking at the cards that you've got and saying, that bit of white there, what does that mean? And what have you done there? And I'm like, I don't remember. It was 6 a.m. I just was going, like I was doing this. But sometimes when you look back and you reinterpret, you realise that actually there was you may not have been aware of it, but it's good that you did it. A bit like the seagull that you found there, so I better not touch that. Otherwise some of you will be very upset. Right, okay, so that's established a couple of figures. And while I'm at it, actually, I'm just going to drop a little bit of, so I'm picking up the cadmium red light, and I've dropped a little bit of purple with it, and I'm just going to let a little bit of a kind of shadow go across the beach here, like that, and across the beach there. And just in there. And I'm going to make it just a little bit darker. Directly under the foot, there. Like that. Yeah, I like that. Suddenly your figure is standing somewhere. You've given it gravitas. You've stood it. It's no longer just in the air, which is a good thing. So while that's drying, I'm going to work myself now back down the, just have a look at this, work myself back down the bits of the pier. Because there's some things that begin to happen when you do the most minimal of things with watercolour. It's all about contrasts. So when you start to sort of laying in heavier tones, hue is colour, tone, colour has tone, colour also has hue, which is colour. But if you put red under the photocopy, it goes very pale grey. If you put blue under the photocopy, it goes very dark. So tone, when you talk of tone with colour, it can be a little bit confusing. But I like to sort of see at this point that I'm using colour. Though I'm using colour, I'm using it as tone. To once again drop a few shadows behind buildings, start to sort of give a little bit more detail, but not over detail it. And the final details I'll do with, again, a slighter brush. Pick up some of that ochre, and I'm going to go along the bottom here like that, just lay it in. And it just knocks back the whiteness, but if I leave the white there, that brings that tower into the fore, just like that. And it's knowing that you can do things like that with watercolour with the most subtle of stains. We're still in view, that's good. I'm just making sure that there's me talking and you're being very quiet and you're probably not seeing anything because I've gone and moved the paper out of view, but I hadn't, so that's good. I realise why you're quiet, because I haven't let you get a word in edgeways, have I? It's true, it's true. You know, we had this guy along, full of himself he was, talked his way through the night. Okay. Good. And just dropping now a little bit of ochre into some of that blue and unifying some of the tone and the colour. And I'm going to drop a bit of tone under there as well, in the underside of the dome, just like that. And it just brings some unity across the whole of that pier, that stretch of the pier, which I rather like.
Do you have a studio in Brighton down on the front of it?
No, I don't have a studio at all at the moment. I'm not like a real artist. I've been living out of a bag for about 10 years. I'm always on the move. Some of the recent work, I do a lot of circus work now, live circus work, and I've started going to gigs, music concerts, and doing a lot of live work and selling that, drawing various people. There's a band called Stone Foundation, who are a white funk band, a musician called Jim Best.
Jim Best.
Sounds familiar, don't know personally.
He was a teacher at Sutton College.
Yeah.
Used to go to him in the evening, and he came from Brighton.
Okay,
And he was a musician,
brilliant.
so I just wondered if you knew him.
I don't know, but the name sounds familiar. Is he living in Brighton still?
Well, I don't know.
No.
Quite a few years back.
Do you have a brother called George?
Yeah, and some Irish friends down the road. That's funny. Georgie Best. Yeah. Okay, so here we go. So this is now sort of putting in the structures, and it's a bit strange because you laid all of that sort of big tone and now we're coming in and we're being just a little bit fiddlier. But it's kind of important at this point, so important that we start to sort of put girders and structures and actually give. And that's when you can sort of drop some darker areas in. I don't think tones are even. I think there are, when the light doesn't fall, where the light does fall. What I'm going to do now is something, this is what I'm going to show you. So I'm going to take the neutral tint. I'm just going to do that. And that. And that. Just drop a little bit more water into that. And that. Do a bit of that. And that. I like it because you can just sort of just pull the brush and it can break slightly as it goes down. You don't have to necessarily have them all a little bit like that and like that, that. And this is when you know the pier still stands up. It's got, that's right, propped.
Now it's really taking shape.
Yeah, and it is these sort of things that prompt the taking shape. If we were doing what was the old West Pier, a lot of this has gone now, but this is obviously what is now renamed. It was Brighton Pier when the nobles owned it. Then they sold it and it's been renamed Palace Pier, which was its name for many, many years. A lot of the locals got very upset when the noble family who own most of the sort of arcades in Britain renamed it Brighton Pier because they felt that that wasn't its true name. Anyway, quibble over that. And it's quite nice because you can then take that down a little bit more. You can give it some depth into the water. I'm just sort of pulling on it. I'm pulling it into the water. I've created a water that I want to pull it into. And this is the thing, it's all an illusion. Art's an illusion. And suddenly, with your watercolour, you've created something that is illusory, but you're beginning to believe it for yourself. So it's sort of like, I've created water. I'm going to pull these pylons, these struts into the water with it. Drop them down like that. And I start feeling a bit excited doing this, you know, it's like small things. You want to be happy? Absolutely. Oh, it is what life's about. Things that make you happy. This makes me happy. I'm beginning to feel this now. I'm getting happy. Beware, I'm getting happy. Right, okay, so coming back to the bits above the structure, this is quite important as well. We begin to drop some of that in there, that down there, and bits of the roof structure. It's nice to begin to indicate those. Quite watered down this, but you can do it heavier if you want. So it might be that some of it is if it's too strong, you can knock a bit of it back. Too strong, knock it back with water. Build it up, knock it back. Build it up, knock it back. Keep it fresh. And the bit I really like, the bit I really, really, really like is when you put the bits of window in, like here. There. So simple. It's marks, it's mark making, that's all it is. And when that dries off a bit, you can sort of tone some of that down as well, or tone around it. So it's possible that you've got something like a window and you just want to put a little bit of tone around that window like that. Under there. Remember, under the dome, it's going to be the light's not hitting under here, so you can start to reintroduce a little bit of slightly darker shadow under there. Make it still darker as it rolls round into the... like that. Nice. And so you don't fall off the pier, although some people do. Don't have to put them all in, just indicate. Little indicators. I'll just get a slightly bigger brush. I'm still keen to get a little bit more shadow under here. Just reinforce what's going on in there. While we're at it, begin to put some more wave movements. And again, if you're going to put waves in, be consistent with what's going on with the movement. Don't have to put too many in, but have them moving in the right way and think about how they break up as they come into shore. All of this is based on curiosity and observation of what actually happens in life. Students, again, we're having a conversation about this, and students said, well, do you just keep looking at everything? I said, yeah, I want to learn. I want to understand what happens to the waves when the waves come in and break. I don't have to be a scientist about it, but if I'm going to draw it, and I'm going to talk about it, say, with you tonight, I need to have some understanding of what is actually going on a rough sea. That's done with quite a dry brush. That's sort of just... And that's quite wet, so I'm just showing you the wet and the dry, but you can blend both. So I'm putting a kind of rhythm into the sea, because it's breaking and it's coming in, it's breaking and it's coming in, it's breaking and it's coming in. I think that's important to exploit. There we go. Like that, look, boom. You do that as you flick it. Remember doing that with a kid?
Oh, yes.
And flick some paint on it. It's quite good. Don't over flick. Like, don't over anything. Don't overeat, don't over smoke, don't over drink, don't over flick. But it's quite good to do a little bit of flicking. That's it for the moment. Whoops. Oh, actually, quite like that. Not sure, but I'm going to take some of that off. It's quite strong. I like it because it drops an edge on the... I'm going to take some of that off like that. That's good. There we go. Yes. Can you see what I'm doing? Playing colour, playing tone. making it work. So down here, if that's a tower, it's probably got a little window in it, but you can't see too much of it because it's all sort of breaking into the mist and into the whatever's going on at the end of that pier. But you can still be indicative of something that might be happening there. Give clues, but don't overpaint it. Likewise down the front, moving here. You're all right, you're very quiet again. You've gone all quiet on me. Concentrating, that's good. Mesmerised. I love speechless. Great words are coming through. You don't have to put everything in. You put in what's kind of necessary to say what it is you want to say. Always. So yellow ochre, neutral tint, ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, cadmium red light. That's it. Not 36 colours. Not that you do use 36 colours, but don't be tempted. You don't need them. The more colours you use, the more likely you are to cancel out the very effect you're trying to achieve. It's just how it is. Strong on that face. And if we can just pull up just a little bit of feature. Down there. Dry back. As I said earlier, watercolour dries back with half the density with which you put it on. It's worth knowing. Necessary to paint the full features of the face? No, not really. Let the viewer work it out.
The lady with the red top looks like she's got a dog on a leash there.
Here? Yeah, maybe.
Red and the red top.
This one?
Yes, she does.
Could be a dog on a leash.
Could be, yeah.
Could be. I'll leave it to your imagination. Drop just slightly darker into that leg down there. Coming down there, just slightly darker into there. It's funny when people are moving, you get this sort of darks, creases of the trousers, the shadows in the leg. Just let that sort of just drop down there, and again, shadow under there, like so. What time do we finish? So we're still okay at the moment, yeah?
9:20.
20 past 9, that's great. So we've got about 10 minutes yet? Beautiful. putting a few little shadows, tints, shades and tints, shades of dark, just in certain parts on the figure, because you get creases. Nothing is so smooth, so you can just pop some sort of shades in and just create the sort of creases there like that. That makes a huge difference. It's just observation of people in clothing as they're moving. The clothing wraps you, but it also creases around you and creases away from you. Perfect with when you're sort of playing little light games. And sometimes, again, the underside of bits where the light doesn't catch. Make drop a little bit dark in there, under there, just bleed that away into the sea, like that. So it's become quite impressionistic in its sort of latter moves, but I think that's cool. Cool, sorry, I teach young people, that's good, that's cool. That's cool. Forgive the vernacular, that's cool. There used to be a man called Alfred Peachy, and he used to hang pictures in Central Hall, Chatham, which is a really bad theatre. There was an old Methodist Central Hall. And Alfred Peachy always used to put stones like this. And I didn't quite get it, but I get it now, because I think the contrast, and stones don't look like that, but it gives it a little bit of texture, which is quite nice. Especially if it's like a sort of pebbly beach, so you can actually, oh, it's got a pebbly beach, what do I do? Well, just indicate a few. And again, wash down underneath them so they start to actually have some form. They look like there might be stones placed on the beach, like that. Just under there. Leave some of them, work some of them. No one taught me that. I just was fascinated by Alfred Peachy. I think he was like an amateur artist in Chatham, but his work was wonderful. And for some reason, this theatre had them on the walls in the vestibule, in the lobby. And from an early age, I used to be taken to the theatre. I was just completely transfixed by them. I kind of learnt something from them, just looking at them. And that's, I think, why we have galleries. I think that's why we need the National Gallery and other places. We need to just look at things and understand how people have approached the things that they saw and learn from them. That's the only problem with having sort of second-hand experiences, again with the students. I want to get them out on a trip soon, because the internet is fine. The engagement with real objects and real life somehow is a different experience, and it's worrying that the generation coming through now have a very different, their brains are thinking differently, because it's virtual and it's digital. And I'm not entirely sure it's a completely good experience, actually. It's worrying. It's not good for the social, and it's not good for learning, and it's not good for interpreting the world in which we live and have to negotiate. Which is another great reason why it's still good to have art school and have courses that foster these kinds of things. Yeah, they may seem a bit old-fashioned, but I think they're really necessary. And we think about well-being, good mental health, and all of these things play a part, play a huge part. Massive part. I'm just going to come back in and drop a little shadow under there. We're almost there, guys.
How'd you get onto the pier?
How'd you get onto it? No, it is true, actually. You can, what I haven't shown you here, because I've blocked it away, you're absolutely right, you do get onto it. Let me show you how you get onto it. It actually extends a bit further down. Like that.
That's what I was thinking.
There you go. You can get on now. Because there's a wall here. And the wall comes down here, drops down there, and you can take a walk down here and along there. My apologies, I forgot to put it in.
I'm glad I mentioned it.
No, you are. I'm glad you mentioned it. Yeah. Get on the old ghost train and, yeah. That was a good point, thank you. Forgotten all about that. Isn't that weird? Carried away. Okay. Just down here, a little bit of just want to something about that. Just want it again. It's dried back, and I want it to be just a bit heavier and more dramatic going under those figures. Just a bit. I'll give you one last poem and we'll call it a day. Just give you So a number of years ago, I set up a creative writing group in Rochester, and the idea was that on one of the occasions we had this sort of thing where you bought an object, you gave it to someone, in 20 minutes you wrote a poem about it. The students brought me this. So I wrote this in 20 minutes. Your neon green and fluff that spins my urge and buffs my rougher edges still, I'm all a bluster. So go duster. Cleanse the corners of my fragile shelf and wipe the cobwebs from my tender self as I caress our flattened sideboard bed with dampened fingers, makes a trail that gets caught in the makes a trail that sweeps and lingers long. May our dusty love until the day I buy bit slow, right? That will do. There we go.